where do we stand? How do we make sure that we play our role in these difficult times? We have our tools. I would say that after the Lisbon Treaty, we do have them. We do have an external service in place. We need to spend the next 5 years to shape our common policy, our common vision, our common strategy. And that is my first task for the next 5 years.
I've been appointed as the Secretary General of the EEAS. Therefore, I'm in charge of managing the whole EEAS and supervising all activities of the service, both here at headquarters and for the delegation, under the authority of the High Representative for Foreign Policy, Federica Mogherini. Je crois que le SEE est encore jeune. Il a 4 ans, entre 4 et 5 ans d'existence, et que c'est peut-être au bout seulement encore dans 5 ans, peut-être au bout de 10 ans, que le service aura atteint sa pleine maturité. Et que d'ici là, notre tâche, c'était le cas de Pierre Vimont avant, la mienne aujourd'hui, d'assurer que la crédibilité du service est comprise et admise par l'ensemble des États membres, d'où l'importance de la qualité de nos productions, de la qualité de nos propositions, d'arriver à faire émerger des consensus sur nos propositions ou sur les propositions qui viennent d'États membres. Je crois que nous sommes dans cette aventure, qui reste une aventure, mais dans laquelle il me semble que ces dernières années, le SEE a démontré déjà une très forte crédibilité, et j'espère que dans encore quelques années, cela s'imposera pour tout le monde.
Some people still wonder what has the European Union to do with security and defense. Since 2003, the EU has deployed 25 missions and operations, civilian and military, sending soldiers, prosecutors, policemen and civilian advisors abroad to deal with crisis situations in places as different as Mali, Afghanistan, Kosovo, Bosnia, or more recently Central African Republic. We need a common security and defense policy to complement what we do in other areas by engaging politically and by being the largest provider of development assistance. We deploy personnel and assets, capabilities provided by the member states. The recognition has been very clear. The EU is slowly but steadily growing into its role as a security provider, in particular in our own neighborhood to the east and to the south of Europe.
I'm responsible for all of our human resources policies, our budgeting and finance, for the management of our 139 delegations, embassies if you like, in third countries around the world, and for basically making sure that the organisation runs smoothly.
I am the head of the division in the External Action Service that is in charge of the selection and the recruitment of colleagues that come to work with us in the service, including and notably colleagues, diplomats from the member states.
My main job here is to assume the presidency of 18 embassies of member states that are present, and also to oversee a quite important portfolio of operation activities.
I work in the Americas Department in the Regional Affairs Division, where I'm in charge of coordinating the relations between the European Union and the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States, CELAC.
As Security Policy and Conflict Prevention Director, I think the first thing that strikes me that's different from working in a member state is the sheer diversity of what I do, but also of the staff that I have working in my directorate. I probably have over 15 nationalities, actually also including Australians, and soon a New Zealander who's going to be joining. And the files that I deal with cover more issues than I know any of my counterparts in the member states to be covering.
The EEAS is of course a very specific diplomatic apparatus. It is very different from national diplomacies. Our first challenge is to coordinate between member states. Also, it is quite heavily on bureaucracy, certainly when you come from a small Ministry of Foreign Affairs as I did. But on the other hand, you have an outreach and you have possibilities that you hardly have in most national diplomacy, certainly from smaller member states.
It actually does make a difference working for 500 million people and 28 countries. And there's of course some truth to that. But I think it's also fair to say that a lot of the instruments that we use are very similar to those that we use in the national services when promoting political dialogue, when investing in promoting international trade relations, and of course making the most of our international development cooperation programs. And then, just as in any other modern international foreign service, you need to be prepared for very hard work, and you need to be willing to engage in administrative processes that can sometimes seem cumbersome. So coming from the outside, it can be a steep learning curve initially working for the EEAS, but it's also a very rewarding experience.
Within the EEAS, my experience has really shown that in an ever complex environment as regards foreign policy, it is very much necessary to have an overarching coordinating element in Europe that can provide an effective foreign action promoting EU's interests. In this sense, the EEAS is very different from a national diplomatic service, because whereas any national diplomatic service's aim is to project a foreign policy based on the national interest, here we have to promote the European interests. There is always a risk of going towards a minimum common denominator, but I think that the aim should be to have a very ambitious foreign policy.
It brings together diplomats from member states, people that have worked for the institutions, also other young people, people with more experience.
I think the main difference between the EEAS and national diplomatic services is the diversity and the range of possible opportunities that we offer. We have, of course, in our headquarters services a number of opportunities for geographical desk officers or management positions, which are very similar to the sort of posts that you would find in a national diplomatic service. But we also offer opportunities doing crisis management operations, under the Common Foreign and Security Policy, and of course the full range of different posts that we offer in our delegations around the world. We have 139 delegations in different countries, from the sort of large strategic partner countries like the United States, Russia, Japan, but also to some of the countries which are at the center of crises or in really quite challenging environments like Iraq and Afghanistan, where European diplomacy is really making a difference. The important thing for us is that we treat permanent officials and national diplomats who want to work with us on equal terms. So when we have a vacant post, when we want to publish a vacancy for applications, we send at the same time details of the post to all our staff here in Brussels and in the delegations, and we also give it to the member states so that people can consider whether they have the right profile for the job. Then if you decide to apply, you send in your CV, a motivation letter and a certificate from your foreign ministry to confirm that you are a genuine national diplomat, and then we pull together all the applications. We make a first sift to decide on the basis of your CV and your motivation letter which are the people that we want to call for interview, and then if you're among those pre-selected candidates, then we'll invite you here to Brussels for an interview, and then after the interview we'll ask you a number of questions about the job, about your professional background, about your motivation for working for the European institutions. Then we make a decision, and if you're the person chosen, we will then offer you a contract to work with the External Action Service for 4 years.
For me, joining the External Action Service and the adventure of the past 4 years that I have been here has been very much about working with my teams and with the member states to try to understand what is the genuine added value of the EU institution in terms of European foreign policy. And this is work in progress. It's a work of imagination. It's a work of consultation with our member states.
I just came back actually from a delegation. Until recently I was working in Japan in our delegation there, and I'm happy to say that in the 4 years that I was there, I really saw a change where we we as delegation, we worked a lot with member states. I can tell you that because I'm Bulgarian, and for me, it's a precious experience. Because as a relatively new member state, we have a lot to learn about the mechanisms, how it works.
The experience in the EEAS, especially here at headquarters, provides a very interesting 360-degree view of everything that's going on within the foreign action of the European Union, not only because of what we do here at the EEAS, but also in the interaction with other key DGs within the external action family, such as DG Trade or DG Development. As regards the strengths of the EEAS, I believe that it provides all the necessary tools and environment to create contacts with other colleagues and other DGs to formulate an effective foreign policy. I think that this is unique to this service that cannot be compared to any other diplomatic service.
We have throughout the last years met the objective that we had to have within the External Action Service 1/3 of our colleagues, of our staff coming from the diplomatic services of the member states. We constantly have colleagues that go back to their ministries and that new colleagues that join us. We have two major exercises where we recruit colleagues. One is for what we call in our language the rotation exercise. This is for people that are interested to go to posts in delegations, serve abroad. And then we have at the headquarters our internal mobility exercise, following which we usually have a certain number of vacancy notices that are published. We are very pleased with the experience that is being working, having the mix of cultures, administrative cultures from the member states, from colleagues that came from the Commission, colleagues that came from the Council, and new colleagues that are coming from other institutions.
Je crois très important pour les diplomates européens de venir travailler au service européen pour l'action extérieure, parce que il est évident que l'acculturation aux institutions européennes de l'intérieur est très importante. Je note d'ailleurs que la très grande majorité des diplomates européens venus travailler au SEE souhaitent y rester le plus longtemps possible et que tous, la très très grande majorité, sont très contents de l'expérience qu'ils y auront acquise et ont envie de la transmettre. Et évidemment, c'est très important pour la culture européenne qu'ils retransmettent ensuite dans leur administration d'origine.
I think working for the EEAS is a fantastic opportunity for anyone, in particular for people who perhaps have already got a first professional experience with the one of our member state diplomatic services. I think that the opportunity to work in the same organization as colleagues from all the member states, often in a service or an embassy which is bigger than maybe you would find in your national service, it opens new horizons and new opportunities, and I would strongly recommend it.
The future of EEAS for me is also to expand somewhat more into consular work, as this is a public service and will give us more access to public appreciation. Diplomacy still suffers a bit from an ivory tower image, and I think if we get more in touch with the public in our postings, that this will also add to our credibility and to our better image.
We've taken a new important step in EU foreign policy and EU external relations. With the External Action Service, we are working, of course, in a complementary way with our member states. I think that the cooperation between the EU institutions, and in particular the EEAS and member states, has never been better. And I think when we see the challenges that the EU is facing internationally, it is vitally important that we are able to raise our game, act together in a coherent and joined up way. And I think the EEAS is the glue in the system that makes things work together.
There's no doubt that the EEAS is a vital part of European foreign policy both now and in the future. It's really all about that together we are stronger. Of course, there are important challenges still to make sure that we calibrate and coordinate our efforts even further to make sure that we make the most of our collective and quite significant resources. But that's a fascinating challenge, isn't it? Connecting the dots. And I think that's an important challenge, no matter if you work for the EEAS or if you work for a national service.
I believe that the EEAS also is a response to a need. the need to formulate an effective policy in an ever more complex world. It is here to stay, and therefore I think that any diplomat from member state should necessarily try to have the experience of the EEAS.
I hope that this short film has stimulated your interest in working for the European External Action Service and provided you with the information that you will need in order to prepare successfully for applying and getting a job with us. Working on European foreign policy at this moment is extremely exciting and challenging, and I think an excellent complement to any successful national diplomatic career.